As a voracious reader and a law-abiding Christian citizen of the United States, every now and then, as I read some of my theology books, I read stuff in them that doesn't even remotely relate to theology, but they stand out on their own merit. And in a book written by a guy named Douglas Wilson, who is a theologian, he writes this: if you were from another planet and someone gave you a mastery of English and a copy of the U.S. Constitution, there is one fundamental takeaway from that Constitution that should be glaring and obvious. Never, ever trust an American, especially Americans who hold public office. The whole thing is structured in a way as to not rely on good faith of our leaders. The fact that such good faith could evaporate is taken for granted. Our distrust of them is seen in how our apparatus of government takes advantage of the rulers' distrust of one another. Our system of checks and balances is pretty intricate. At the federal level, we have three branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, which, ironically, our current president just tried to override by stacking the court and putting an ethics committee against the justices themselves. And then the legislative branch is itself divided into two chambers, the Senate and the House, with the House designed to respond to the people's directly, and the Senate designed to respond to the interests of the states at large. The same kind of checks and balance exists on the state level with executive, legislative, and judicial branches, and on top of that, the authority of the central government and the state governments are put in tension with one another. All of this is to prevent too much political power from accumulating in one place, which is kind of what we're seeing right now. And this is because the founders knew, as Lord Acton later expressed it, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The founders did not establish the Constitution to protect future generations from the British. We already had our independence from Britain. What they did was protect future generations of Americans from Americans. So having read that, I guess I should sum up the fact that we are on the verge of another election, and we need to understand that not only is the sitting president attempting to try to manipulate and control the judicial branch through the executive branch and the legislative branch, but we also now have the potential of voting in basically what is almost a full-blown Marxist as a president. In the 2020 election, the senator that was found to be the farthest left was Kamala Harris. And that is because she basically sat under the tutelage and the education and was raised by a full-blown Marxist and her father. We need to understand that the Constitution is antithetical to communism and vice versa. So this needs to be taken into consideration before you vote. The end result of Marxism, in the end, is misery and death. The 20th century was a perfect example of that. There was in excess of 100 million people dead because of the USSR and China. History documents this. We have such short memories. We really need to go back and look at history and see how miserably Marxism failed. Democracy is a better idea. The Constitution's a better idea. We need to stick to the original intent that the Founding Fathers created.